Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to the Horror Master YouTube channel, and happy Hallows Eve. We're on October 30th. We're the day before Halloween, so happy Hallows Eve. Everyone is pretty excited for tomorrow being Halloween. So I'm really excited. But regardless, we're here on episode 30, one of the penultimate last episode of the series. Which, again, guys, thank you so much for sticking behind me throughout this entire series. We're almost to the very end, unfortunately, but you know what? We're gonna keep going up with the bang. And with episode 30, we're gonna be tackling a franchise that a lot of people were shocked I didn't talk about the beginning of the franchise, but I saved it for a specific reason. We're gonna be tackling the entire Hellraiser franchise. Yes, one of those franchises that has been beloved by so many fans, or hated for so many fans, but regardless, the Cenobites, Pinhead, that's it. What more can I say about the franchise? The fact that it has Cenobites, that are the angels or demons, the whole thing, the Lament configuration. I mean, it's the Hellraiser universe, the Hellraiser world. It's one of those franchises that has been lately been coming up in popularity so much. I mean, Pinhead is one of the most iconic horror icons next to a Freddy or a Jason or a Michael or a Chucky. But regardless, let's get into the rank mode. We have 11 films. Yes, we're gonna talk about 11 fucking films, which again, my sanity has been gone over the roof for doing these ranking mods. But you know what? It's horror. It's October. Let's get into the ranking mode. So at number 11, at the bottom of the barrel, and I mean, I really bottom of the barrel, we have Hellraiser Revelations. Now, Hellraiser Revelations, you can kind of tell that this movie was the most cheapest and most, it pretty much it sums it all. It's probably the cheapest horror Hellraiser film in the entire franchise. You can actually tell by the way that the Cenobites look, that seem more CGI than more prosthetics. I mean, even the I think the guy who portrayed Pinhead after Doc Bradley left. I mean, nothing against the actor, but he wasn't the greatest Hellraiser you're ever gonna see. Not he was the greatest Pinhead you're ever gonna see, but it is probably one of the cheapest Hellraiser films you're ever gonna see. Probably a film I wouldn't recommend anybody watch. I just saw it once to see for this ranking point. To me, Hellraiser Revelations at the bottom of the barrel at my number 11. At number 10, we have Hellraiser Hellseeker. Now, this is a little bit interesting film. I mean, pretty much what I said about Revelations kind of applies to Hellseeker, but at least the only thing that gets good about this is that in this film, we get Kristen Cotton back, which is shocking that she's once back in the franchise. And of course, the ending was disappointing, probably a big shocking ending. But regardless, it was great that Christy Cotton came back into the film, into the franchise, and that shocking revelation at the very end kind of made it a bit higher than Revelations. But personally, it wasn't really the most successful film. Like I said, the shocking revelation throughout the ending, especially the douchebag guy, the main character, who has to go through all like hell and all that and figure out that he's fucking dead. And of course, Christie's holding the lament box at the very end, which is kind of shocking that she's holding the lament box after so many years have passed since the original two films. But regardless, Hellraiser Hellseeker is at my number 10. At number 9, we have Hellraiser Inferno. Kind of the same thing I said about Hellraiser Hellseeker applies to Inferno, but this one, it has a bit of a different vibe. This film has a more of a it's kind of a Silent Hill kind of vibe. You know what I mean? The way that the movie was shot, the way that the Cenobites presented to itself. It's still a bit more CGI, but at least in this one's a bit more prosthetic and CGI. It's kind of a bit of a combination of both, in my personal opinion. But like I said, it gives you that Silent Hill kind of vibe, which a lot of hardcore Silent Hill fans will dig into that if you kind of know that kind of vibe to it. But it's one of those films that's not really the greatest in the franchise, not even the worst in the franchise. Like I said, this is probably one of the few films I'll probably watch twice just for the hell of it. But it's not like I said, not the greatest film. It ain't the worst. It's just in the middle of the road. So for those reasons, Hellraiser Inferno is at my number 9. At number 8, we have Hellraiser Deader. Now, Dead is one of those films that a lot of people could give a lot of shit about, which there are some good points about. But I feel that this film was a bit better than the predecessor films and probably one of the film after it. But I think with Deader kind of has that little suspense of that investigating kind of suspense, even though you can kind of tell that this film wasn't really supposed to be a kind of a Hellraiser film. They kind of added the pinhead and the Cenobite almost at the very end of the film or maybe the middle of the film. They just decided to write a script and decide, oh, let's just put the title Hellraiser on and put the Cenobites on that, which when it comes to that, those kind of films, when they just make a film just to keep the rights on, it's kind of bit of unfortunate because you're not doing it. You're not doing this film for the love and passion of the franchise. You're just doing it to keep the rights to it, which kind of fucking sucks. But regardless, Hellraiser Deader is at my number 8. At number 7, we have Hellraiser Judgment. Now, this is one of the latest films of the franchise. Before we're gonna talk about the 2022 version, that a lot of fans actually felt this was a bit of a return to the original Hellraiser kind of vibe, kind of gore. Which, in seeing this film, I see the arguments that a lot of Hellraiser fans, when they saw Judgment, they actually thought that this film was the closest thing they were ever gonna get to the original films. And I do see a lot of comparisons to that. I mean, there's more gore and there's more blood in there. There's a bit, like I said, there's a bit more CGI, but it's not that much CGI you can't even describe. But Judgment is probably a film that a lot of people don't really look upon as one of the best in the franchise. It's probably a bit more in the mid, more to the good side than the bad side. But with Judgment, it's a film that you might enjoy the living crap out of it, and I actually enjoy the living crap out of it, which is shocking to me. But regardless, Hellraiser Judgment is at my number 7. At number 6, we have Hellraiser Hellworld. Now, before I say this, the concept of Pinhead and the Cenobites in cyberspace kind of makes me want to bullshit this film. Honestly, when I first read the title, Hellraiser, Hellworld, and saw the description of this film, I thought this was gonna be the fucking worst film of all time. And for a lot of fans that I've met or talked about, a lot of people put this film at the very bottom of the barrel. And I understand why, but the concept of, you know, Hellraiser, the Pinhead, Cenobites in cyberspace kind of makes me kind of interested in the film. Not gonna lie, it's one of those guilty pleasures horror films that I might go back once in a while and enjoy it. Of course, Doc Bradley is still by this time. I think this one was his last or before last film before he kind of was no longer Pinhead. But Doc Bradley, again, Doc Bradley still is a fucking movie. I mean, he's fucking Pinhead for fuck's sake. But everything about it is kind of crazy. The effects in this film aren't the best because, I mean, let's be honest, they're a bit outdated back in the late 90s, early 2000s. But just the concept alone of the lament configuration in cyberspace with the Cenobites, it's kind of shocking me that they actually did this, which I give them props for that. At number 5, we have Hellraiser Bloodline. Now, Bloodline is kind of a bit of a prequel and a sequel to the franchise. Prequel because it kind of tells the story of how the lament configuration or the puzzle box was created and then all the whole lore became about, and of course the Cenobites and all that. And it's just a continuation of the film going back into, of course, in modern day times during that film. But the fact that it actually went back in time and tell us the story of how the lament configuration was created from this architect or somebody that made a deal with the devil, and the spirit came out of the lament configuration, which is kind of crazy to think that even Pinhead was like, "Hold on, princess," which I was like, "Damn, even Pinhead knows not to fuck with her." And also, I want to say that the Cenobites in this film were a bit more creative, for Pinhead being the main Cenobite, and then you got the princess, and then you got the fucking two guys, the twins, who are stuck together in the fucking head. I thought it was one of the most creative Cenobites that I've seen in a long time. I mean, a lot of people kind of don't shit on this film. They kind of see it like as a mech kind of film, but I really enjoyed the film for the reasons. Hellraiser Bloodline is at my number 5. At number 4, shockingly, we have Hellbound Hellraiser 2. Now, the reason Hellbound Hellraiser 2 is at my number 4, it's not because it's a bad film. Hell, it's a great film. Like, I think from Hellbound up, from the next films I'm going to talk about, they're fucking amazing films, and probably the only films that I might suggest a Hellraiser fan or somebody who wants to get into the franchise to go and watch. But with Hellbound Hellraiser 2, they continue, of course, squeezing cotton, still kind of from the effects of part one, trying to go back and go into hell or whatever there are to find his dad, which we know is no longer it's not his dad. It's of course it's Frank trying to manipulate Christine to saving him, and then you got the girl who can talk and is kind of using the Lament configuration. Then of course then you got I'm forgetting the fucking wife from the very first film. Shit, I can't remember fucking, but you know who she is. She comes back from the dead and starts to do the same thing Frank did to kind of rejuvenate herself. And then the guy she's with, they go into, of course, the hell, and he becomes kind of like the new kind of headed Cenobite or something, or the Leviathan, if I remember correctly. And he starts to kill all the Cenobites from Chatter to Blah Blah to the female Cenobite to even Pinhead. They kind of show their faces before they became Cenobites, which I really like that. It kind of shows us a bit of humanity in the Cenobites before they actually die, or for a brief moment kind of die and then come back in the next film. It's a weird film that takes a lot of liberty in what the Hellraiser franchise could have done and did do, and I do give him props a lot for that. For those reasons, Hellbound Hellraiser 2 is at my number 4. At number 3, we have Hellraiser Hell on Earth. Now, I felt that Hellraiser 3 was the perfect film to Pinhead to finally be let loose. Because before the previous film, Pinhead was kind of a bit more of a side character that didn't do a lot. He was just standing there and let people suffer. I felt that in Hellraiser 3, he was able to finally go break loose, no pun intended, and just go crazy with all the stuff he did. I mean, of course, one of the most infamous scenes, of course, when he's in the church, has the two nails on him from his fucking pins. It's like this, says, I am the way. And Doc Bradley's laugh, like, oh my god, it's one of the most haunting scenes in Hellraiser, one of the most haunting scenes in horror in recent memory. And of course, I gotta give him props for the Cenobites, the creation of the Cenobites. They had some really creative Cenobites that, my god, like I said, I wish if I were alive during that time and I was cast to be a background, a next to be a Cenobite, I would have loved to be a Cenobite in that film, because the way the Cenobites were created in this film were so unique and so different that, I wish they would have made more different Cenobites, which they did eventually. But like I said, this was probably the craziest film and the only film that I believe Pinhead was able to actually be this badass, leather, seductive, pain and pleasure motherfucker that everybody loves and adores. So for those reasons, Hellraiser 3 is at my number 3. At number 2, shockingly enough that I had this at number 2, we have Hellraiser, the 2022 version. Now, a bit of a confession. When this project was first announced, that they were going to remake the Hellraiser franchise, after the bombshells of the previous films before that, I honestly was not a fan of this remake. And I've said it before. You've heard me in previous reviews. I said I'm not against remakes. But when you have a franchise who has gone down and down and down and down in popularity, I had mixed emotions, honestly. And then when they announced that Doug Bradley wasn't even gonna be in the film, in some way, kind of made me kind of iffy. And then when they announced that it wasn't gonna be a male Pinhead, it was gonna be a female Pinhead, or the priestess, which we know now, I had a bit mixed emotions, because of course everyone knows Pinhead as this male sort of, even though they never figured out what the sex is. But regardless, when this project was announced, I was not really on board at first. And when this project was beginning to develop and everything was beginning to be shooting, and me hearing people saying it's really good and all that, I was like, okay, a bit of I wasn't getting too hyped, but I was like very interested. And then when they released a picture of the priestess in her full-on Pinhead makeup and all that. When I saw that picture, I was fully on board. This is before the trailer was released. And when the trailer was released, I was fucking blown away of how good it looked, this film. The fact that this film was going to be released on Hulu was one of those things that kind of made me kind of worry, because, when the movie's released from direct to video to streaming, it usually doesn't mean that the studio or the streaming service doesn't have a lot of faith in it. But when I saw the picture of the priestess, when I saw the trailer of the film, I was on board. I was like, this is gonna be really good. And when the film dropped, it blew my fucking mind. I honestly thought that the Cenobites in this film had more of an involvement in the film, which is a pretty good thing on them. Everything, even the Cenobites, the way they all look, from the priestess to to Thatcher to the Weeper, all of them, it wasn't that much CGI focused. Even though there was some CGI on the film, the the Cenobites, they were all practical effects, makeup. They kind of went back and saw what the original film did, and maybe something like maybe Hell on Earth did. Combine the best of both worlds, add modern stuff into the film, and created probably one of, if not one of the best horror films in 2022. Which I'm so happy that this film did so much. I'm so happy that this film got the much praise, because, like I said before, I wasn't on board at first because some remakes are shit. This remake, one of the best remakes I've seen in years, and I hope to God that they make more Hellraiser films in this new iteration of the franchise, because I'm interested in what they're actually gonna bring to the table with the franchise, because from everything what I saw and everything that happened, we kind of know they're gonna make more Hellraiser films. That's an obvious given. But the fact that they actually went on board and went crazy on this fucking blows my mind. And of course, the lament configuration, it wasn't really just a box. It was more from a triangle to a scepter to a lot of stuff that I'm like, at first was like, what the fuck are they doing? And when you saw the film, it fucking blew my mind. Not to mention, it was fucking gory as hell. Bloody as hell. Which, blood really doesn't make sometimes films great. In this case, it made the fucking film better. Everything about it was perfect. Even the casting was perfect. Even the priestess, which I'm forgetting her name, which is a transgender, which good, because that gives more appraisal to people of the LGBTQ community, that they can do this. They can revolutionize horror. And look, we have a priestess as Pinhead. Never thought in a million years that was ever gonna happen. I think I've talked about more about this film than other films. That's how much I love the new Hellraiser film. But of course, at number one, we have the original Hellraiser. I could have easily put the 2022 version at number one, but I felt that the first Hellraiser, and I always said this about the first film about a franchise, it will either make or break a franchise. This film made the franchise. Of course, it had some unfortunate, sidetracks in later films, but it all started with this first film when Clive Barker took us to a world that we never thought could ever exist, with pain, and pleasure, the lament configuration, coming back from hell, your deepest desires, the fear, the pleasure, the Cenobites, introducing the Cenobites into this film. Even though the Cenobites weren't really much on screen, but the fact that the prosthetics, Pinhead, Chatterer, Blob, the female Cenobite, Frank, Christine, of course, Christine's dad, and the stepmother, everything about this film was perfect for the time that it was. And who would have thought that Clive Barker would create Hellraiser and would later be on to create something like Candyman, which is still shocking to me that they never did like a crossover, which that would have been fucking cool if there was ever a crossover between Pinhead and Candyman, since they're both kind of in hell in a way. But regardless, The first film is one of the most iconic horror films of the 80s, one of the most iconic films in horror in general. It's regarded, I mean, like I said, at the time, nothing like that was ever seen, which it blows my mind that this film was able to create a world that we still don't know the answers of, and I'm really excited for the new films that eventually they're gonna be released in the future. But it all started with the first Hellraiser, an iconic film, an iconic horror film of all time. That's why the first Hellraiser is at my number one. And that does it for this video, guys. I hope you guys really enjoy this rank come on. Like I said, this was a lot of fun. And like I said, we got 1 day left. Process elimination might be suggest what's gonna be for episode 31. It's the almost obvious one, which of course everyone's gonna tell. Tomorrow, Halloween night, we're gonna be ranking the entire Halloween franchise, including Halloween Kills. Yes, it's about time we're gonna be talking about one of the most iconic slashers in horror, and pretty much the whole reason, alongside Hellraiser, that I decided to make this series in the first place. Because if it wasn't for the Halloween series, this entire series I've been doing, I wouldn't actually have the idea of doing it, to be honest. But stay tuned for that for tomorrow's video, guys, for on Halloween Day. So I'm really excited to bring you guys that video, and I might add some new things to the table. Maybe somebody might be joining me, depending. But let's see what it is, guys. But hope stay tuned for tomorrow's video, guys. It's gonna be a lot of fun. But don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, congratulations, bang. Follow me on my Instagram, follow me on my Twitter, and I cannot thank you guys enough, guys. Stay safe, everyone. Happy Hallows Eve, and until next time, stay metal.